He was the Mafia boss everyone feared, until one rainy night he saw her, collapsed on the street, and two little boys crying beside her, calling her Mommy. But when he looked into their eyes, he froze, because those eyes were his own. And that night, the devil remembered what love felt like. Thunder tore through the clouds as night swallowed the city whole. Rain lashed against black rooftops, washing away the noise of distant sirens. Mr. Derek's convoy sliced through the storm, engines growling like beasts on a leash. Inside the sleek car, his eyes stayed fixed on the blurred reflections of lightning in the glass. He was returning from a deal that had painted his hands with more blood than gold. His phone buzzed. Another call, another problem, but he ignored it. Something about that night felt wrong, heavy, as if the air itself whispered an omen. Suddenly, the car screeched to a halt. The driver's voice trembled. "Boss, someone's on the road." Before Derek could speak, his guards were already out, weapons drawn, scanning the shadows. Through the windshield, he saw it. A faint figure collapsed in the middle of the rain-drenched street. Her hair was plastered to her face, her dress clinging to her trembling body. Next to her, two small shapes were huddled close, crying in the storm. "Mommy, wake up, please!" A boy's voice echoed through the night. That sound pierced something deep in Derek's chest, a sound he hadn't felt in years. He pushed open the door and stepped into the rain, the cold biting through his suit. His men shouted for him to stay back, but he waved them off. Lightning cracked above, illuminating the scene in blinding white. The woman's face became visible for a heartbeat, and the world around him fell silent. Amy. The name exploded inside his head like thunder. The woman he'd once sworn to protect. The woman he'd buried under years of power and regret. He froze, his breath shallow, unable to move. Every memory he'd locked away came crashing back. Her laughter, her touch, the night he left her behind to save her from his world. But she was here, broken, unconscious. And beside her, two little boys were clinging to her dress, crying with all the strength their tiny hearts could hold. Derek's guards exchanged uncertain glances. They had seen their boss face gunfire without flinching. But tonight he looked terrified. He took a slow step forward, rain streaming down his face. The boys noticed him and stiffened. One of them tried to shield the other with trembling arms. That single act struck Derek harder than any bullet ever could. He knelt, ignoring the mud soaking his knees. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, his voice foreign to his own ears. The older twin looked up, eyes wide, shimmering like liquid steel, the same storm-gray eyes Derek saw in his mirror every morning. The sight hit him like a blade. "Mommy won't wake up," the boy whispered, voice cracking. Derek swallowed hard, forcing calm into his tone. "She will," he said, though he wasn't sure if it was a promise or a prayer. He touched the woman's wrist. Faint pulse. Relief and panic collided inside him. "Get the med kit," he barked, his command slicing through the rain. His guards rushed to obey, startled by the tremor in their boss's tone. Derek brushed wet strands of hair from her face, and for a fleeting second, time rewound. He saw her as she once was, laughing under sunlight, teasing him for his arrogance. But this face was thinner, pale, and bruised by hardship. What had life done to her? He had all the money in the world, yet he'd never thought to look back. Now destiny had dragged her to his feet in the middle of a storm. The younger twin tugged his sleeve timidly. "Sir, can you help Mommy?" Derek's throat tightened. "I'll get her help, I promise." The boy's lip trembled. "You look like my dad." Derek froze again, his pulse roaring in his ears. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but the words wouldn't come. He turned his gaze back to Amy, feeling a tremor in his hand. Could it be? No. Fate wouldn't be that cruel. Or that kind. Rain kept falling, relentless. As if the heavens were mourning with him. He lifted her gently, his strong arms trembling under her fragile weight. She felt too light, too cold. Her head fell against his shoulder, and he caught the faint scent of lavender, her scent. It ripped through him, dragging out the man he'd buried beneath layers of crime and command. Behind him, the twins clung to each other, eyes wide with fear. "Boss, should we call an ambulance?" one guard asked. Derek's jaw clenched. "No, my car. Now." The guards exchanged wary looks but obeyed. He wasn't about to let her vanish into another hospital without him knowing every second of her care. As they placed her in the back seat, one of the twins tried to climb in after her. Derek caught him mid-step. "Wait!" The boy stared up at him, defiant yet scared. "She doesn't like to be alone when she's sick." The innocence in his tone shattered Derek's composure. He nodded quickly. "Then stay, both of you." The boys climbed in, one clutching her hand, the other whispering softly to her ear. "Mommy, we're safe now." Derek slid in beside them, feeling the weight of 8 lost years pressing against his ribs. The car sped through the storm, wipers thrashing. Derek couldn't look away from her face. Her eyelashes fluttered faintly with every bump in the road. A single droplet of rain traced down her cheek like a tear that refused to fall. He wanted to shout, to ask the universe why she was here, why now, but the words stayed trapped in his chest. Every heartbeat screamed with guilt. He'd walked away believing it was mercy. He'd told himself she'd be safer far from him. But fate had a cruel sense of humor. Now she lay beside him, broken and breathless, while 2 children, her children, stared at him with eyes that mirrored his own. One of the boys pressed his palm against Derek's arm. "Are you a hero?" he asked innocently. Derek blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "Mommy said heroes help people without being asked." He looked away, jaw tightening. "I'm not a hero." The child tilted his head. "But you came for us." That simple statement cut deeper than any confession. For the first time in years, Derek didn't know who he was, a killer, a savior, or something in between. The car hit a pothole, and Annie's hand slipped from his. He caught it instinctively, feeling the faint pulse flicker beneath her skin. Her lips moved slightly, a whisper lost in the rain. He leaned closer. Heart hammering. She had murmured his name. Derek. The sound turned his world upside down. His name spoken like a ghost from the past. He gripped her hand tighter as if holding on could anchor her back to life. "She's coming around," the driver said, glancing in the mirror. "No," Derek muttered, voice raw. "She's fighting." The older twin's eyes widened. "You know her?" Derek hesitated. "I did." The boy frowned, confused. "Did you stop being her friend?" The question stabbed straight through him. "I stopped being worthy," he whispered. The hospital lights appeared in the distance, glowing through the rain like distant stars. He exhaled shakily, half relieved, half terrified. Would she recognize him when she woke? Would she hate him? Would she tell the twins who he was? His chest tightened as another thought formed. What if she'd moved on? What if those boys already had a father? The idea tore through him more viciously than a bullet. Then the younger twin suddenly whispered, "Sir, Mommy said our dad went to the sky." Derek's heart stopped. "To the sky." The child nodded sadly. "She said he was a good man once, but he's gone forever." The words left Derek hollow. He turned away, hiding the ache in his eyes. Gone forever, that was what she told them. Maybe that's what he deserved. The car screeched into the hospital driveway. Guards leaped out, shouting for help. Derek carried her again, ignoring the stares of doctors and nurses. She was weightless, as if time had drained every ounce of strength from her body. He laid her gently on the stretcher, his hands reluctant to let go. "Take care of her," he growled, "or I'll burn this place to the ground." The doctors nodded, frightened by the ice in his tone. As they wheeled her away, one of the twins tugged at Derek's coat. "Will you come too?" the boy asked. Derek stared down at him, those same storm-gray eyes staring back. "I'm not leaving," he promised. And for the first time in his life, the promise felt heavier than any oath he'd ever sworn to his empire. He watched as the hospital doors swallowed her, the sound of the rain fading behind glass. Inside, his soul trembled. He didn't know yet that the night had just rewritten his destiny. He didn't know those twins carried his blood, but deep inside, something ancient and buried had awakened. The Mafia boss who ruled with fear was gone for that moment, replaced by a man kneeling in the rain, whispering a prayer to the woman who once held his heart. One of the boys, shivering under the hospital lights, looked up and said softly, "Sir, please help our mommy." He hesitated, every muscle frozen. The child's next words shattered the last wall inside him. "You look just like my dad." The hospital's corridor hummed with distant beeps and whispers, but to Derek, the world was silent. The rain still clung to his suit, dripping onto the polished tiles beneath his boots. He stood there, immovable, unreadable, watching the doctors wheel Annie through swinging glass doors. The moment they vanished behind the emergency ward, something inside him cracked. For years, he'd built an empire that feared his name, yet now he couldn't command the heartbeat of one fragile woman to keep beating. The twins clung to each other on a nearby bench, their small faces pale and drenched, staring at him with a mixture of fear and trust. He couldn't decide which hurt more, the familiarity of their eyes or the innocence they carried in them. He exhaled slowly, hands trembling as he loosened his tie. His guards stood a few steps away, unsure whether to speak or disappear. They'd seen him end lives without blinking, but now the mighty Derek looked like a man lost at sea. His chest felt tight, the kind of ache he used to drown in whiskey but never silence. Every flash of lightning outside the window felt like the night mocking him, reminding him of what he'd done, what he'd lost. Minutes passed, maybe hours. He didn't know. He kept pacing until the doctor emerged, a clipboard in hand and exhaustion etched on his face. "She's stable for now," the man said cautiously. "Severe exhaustion, malnutrition, dehydration. She must have been under immense stress for a long time." The words hit Derek like bullets. He blinked, jaw tightening. "How long?" he asked, voice low but sharp. "How long has she been living like this?" The doctor hesitated. "Years, maybe. The body learns to survive on very little when it has to." Derek's throat closed up. Years. While he'd been drowning in luxury and blood money, she'd been starving. Literally starving. He looked toward the glass window that separated him from her hospital bed. She lay motionless, tubes and monitors surrounding her fragile frame, her hair damp and tangled against the pillow. His fingers curled into fists. The guilt was suffocating. The older twin tugged gently at his coat. "Is Mommy going to die?" The question hit like a knife. Derek went down to one knee, eye level with the boy. "No," he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "She's strong, stronger than anyone I've ever known." But deep down, he wasn't sure if he was comforting the boy or himself. The child nodded, eyes shining with tears. "She always said that pain makes people brave." Derek swallowed hard. "She's right," he whispered, "but she's had enough pain." He stood, his gaze locked on the glass again. The fluorescent light washed her pale skin in ghostly shades, making her look like a memory instead of flesh and bone. The last time he saw her, she had fire in her eyes. Now, that fire was gone, replaced by silence. He remembered how she'd begged him to walk away from the life he led, the guns, the lies, the empire built on fear, and he did what he thought was right. He walked away, but not from the crime, from her. The younger twin spoke this time, his small voice trembling. Mommy says Daddy went to the sky. Is that true? Derek froze. His pulse thundered in his ears. The boy's innocent face tilted up toward him, waiting for an answer. Derek forced himself to smile faintly. Sometimes people don't really go away, he said quietly. They just lose their way. The child blinked, confused but comforted, and Derek looked away before the tears could form. He turned to his guard. Get food for them, something warm. The man nodded and hurried off. Derek sat beside the twins, silent for a long time. Every second stretched like a confession he couldn't speak. He remembered her laughter, her defiance, her softness. He remembered the night he'd held a gun in one hand and her photograph in the other, convincing himself that love was weakness. He thought walking away would keep her safe. Instead, he'd condemned her to survive alone. The sound of footsteps broke his thoughts. The doctor returned, clearing his throat nervously. "Mr. Derek, there's something you should see." He handed him a thin folder. Derek opened it slowly, his eyes scanning the first page. Name, age, blood type. Amy Grace. His chest tightened at the sight of her name printed in ink. Then his gaze dropped to the section labeled Emergency Contact. It was blank, completely empty. For the first time, the mighty Derek felt the chill of loneliness not as a punishment, but as karma. She had no one, not even him. "She didn't list anyone?" he asked quietly. The doctor shook his head. No relatives, no spouse, no emergency number. Derek exhaled sharply through his nose, turning away. The silence that followed felt unbearable. "She had 2 kids," he muttered. "She must have had someone." The doctor looked uncomfortable. "That's the other thing, sir." He hesitated, flipping the page. "The children's records list their full names." Derek's gaze hardened. "And?" The doctor cleared his throat. "Leo Derrickson. Sid Derrickson." The name hit him like a sledgehammer. Derrickson. His mind went blank for a moment. The air around him vanished. He looked toward the twins sitting a few feet away, Leo, the brave one, and Sid, the gentle one, and suddenly everything made sense. Their eyes, their hair, their stubbornness. The universe had been screaming the truth all along, and he'd been too blind to hear. "You're sure about this?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. The doctor nodded. "That's what the hospital records say. She listed no father's name, but she gave them your surname." Derek felt his pulse spike. His surname, not his empire's name, his. He looked through the glass again. The woman lying inside wasn't just his past. She was the bridge to the 2 souls who carried his blood. He took a step toward the window, pressing his hand against the glass. "Why didn't you tell me, Annie?" he murmured under his breath. "Why did you make them believe I was gone?" His reflection stared back at him, haunted, angry, broken, a man powerful enough to buy a city but powerless against the truth that had just found him. The twins finished their food quietly, their small shoulders brushing as they leaned on each other. He watched them, memorizing every detail, the curve of their smiles, the way Leo shielded Sid from strangers, the same way he used to shield Annie from his world. Blood didn't need proof. It screamed through the silence between them. The older twin suddenly looked up. "Sir, will you stay until she wakes up?" Derek hesitated. "I will," he said finally. The boy nodded, satisfied, then leaned against his brother's shoulder. As their eyes fluttered shut, Derek turned away, hiding the storm rising within him. He stepped outside into the dim corridor, the scent of antiseptic sharp in the air. The storm outside had quieted, but inside him it raged, stronger than ever. He leaned against the wall, his thoughts unraveling. Her son's last name is Derrickson. The words replayed in his mind over and over until they became a heartbeat of their own. Every choice he'd made led him to this hallway, to this truth. The empire, the power, the loneliness, it all meant nothing now. Somewhere behind that door lay the woman he'd broken and two boys who unknowingly carried his name. For the first time in years, Derek felt fear, not of death, but of redemption. He straightened, eyes narrowing. "I won't lose them again," he muttered. His voice was calm, but the promise in it was iron. The Mafia boss was still alive, but tonight he wasn't fighting for territory or blood money. He was fighting for something he thought he'd buried long ago: family. The doctor hesitated before walking away, glancing back at Derek. "Mr. Derek," he said softly, "if you're her next of kin, you'll need to sign the forms." Derek's gaze flicked to the paper in his hand, the space beside the word spouse left blank. He stared at it for a long moment, then scrawled his name without a word. As the ink bled into the paper, the storm outside began to fade, but inside Derek's heart, it was only beginning. 3. The first rays of dawn filtered through the hospital blinds, soft and golden, painting lines across the sterile white walls. Derek hadn't moved all night. He sat in the corner of the room, his elbows resting on his knees, eyes locked on the motionless figure lying on the bed. Every rhythmic beep of the heart monitor reminded him she was still here, alive, fragile, and maddeningly distant, even in unconsciousness. The twins had fallen asleep curled up together on the couch nearby, their tiny bodies wrapped in hospital blankets. Their steady breathing was the only thing keeping him sane. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion etching itself across his face. He'd spent countless nights in boardrooms and under gunfire. But this waiting, was the kind of torment he wasn't built to endure. Every time he looked at her, he remembered the woman who once laughed at danger, who could calm his fury with just a glance. Now she looked like a ghost from a life he'd destroyed. The doctor entered quietly, clipboard in hand. "She's stable enough to wake soon," he murmured. Derek's chest tightened. "Soon? Any time now," the doctor replied, adjusting the IV line. "But she may not react well to stress. Her body's been through too much." Derek's jaw flexed. "I won't cause her stress," he said, though even he wasn't sure he believed it. The doctor gave a curt nod and left, leaving Derek alone with the weight of what was coming. The minutes crawled. Rain still whispered faintly outside, but the storm had passed. He leaned back in the chair, exhaustion clawing at his edges, when suddenly a soft sound broke through the silence. A breath, a stir. His head snapped up. Her hand twitched, fingers curling weakly against the sheet. Then her eyelids fluttered, struggling to open. Derek's heart pounded in his chest. He stood quickly, every muscle tense, afraid to move, afraid she might vanish if he blinked. Her lashes lifted, revealing eyes that once owned his soul. But now they were clouded with confusion. She blinked at the ceiling, then turned slightly, her gaze landing on the man standing by her bedside. For a heartbeat, her breath caught. Recognition flickered, and with it, pain. "Derek?" she whispered, her voice fragile as wind. He swallowed hard, taking a cautious step forward. "You're awake," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, her tone trembling between disbelief and resentment. He tried to smile, but it faltered. "You were dying on the street, Annie. I couldn't walk away this time." Her face tightened, a tear sliding down her cheek. "You already walked away once," she said softly, "and that almost killed me." Her words were knives disguised as whispers. Derek's chest constricted. "I thought I was saving you," he said. "From me, from my world." She turned her face away, eyes fixed on the blank wall. "You don't get to decide what I needed," she said, her voice cracking. "You saved yourself, not me." Silence filled the room like smoke, thick, suffocating. He wanted to argue, to explain, but every excuse sounded hollow even in his own head. His hands clenched at his sides. "You were lying there with two boys, Annie. Two boys who—" his voice broke slightly. "Who have my eyes." Her breath hitched. Slowly, she turned to face him again, her expression torn between fury and heartbreak. "Don't," she whispered sharply. "Don't you dare claim them." Derek took a step closer, his tone low, raw. "Claim them. They're my sons, aren't they?" Her eyes flashed with pain. "You lost the right to call them that when you chose power over love," she hissed. "They're mine alone." Derek's jaw tightened. "Look at them, Annie. Just look at them. Every feature, every glance, they're pieces of us." She shook her head, tears spilling freely now. "No, they're everything I wanted you not to be. Gentle, kind, unbroken." Her voice cracked on the last word. He stepped closer until he stood beside her bed. His hand hovered above hers but never touched. "You think I don't know what I've done?" he said quietly. "I built an empire and buried my soul under it. I told myself it was for you, to keep you safe, but all it did was make me forget how to live." His voice trembled. "And now, here you are, reminding me what I destroyed." Annie squeezed her eyes shut, her breathing shallow. The past hung between them like shattered glass, too dangerous to touch, too painful to ignore. "I didn't need your empire," she said finally. "I needed you, the man who promised me forever and vanished before sunrise." Derek's shoulders slumped. "I thought leaving was mercy," he murmured. "It was cruelty," she replied coldly. A small, sleepy voice interrupted them. "Mommy?" Both of them froze. The older twin, Leo, stood at the door, rubbing his eyes, clutching the edge of the blanket. His gaze shifted between them, confusion and curiosity mixing in his innocent face. "Mommy, you're awake!" He rushed forward, climbing onto the bed, wrapping his arms around her weak body. Annie gasped softly, holding him tight, pressing a kiss to his hair. Derek watched, his throat burning with a mixture of awe and agony. Leo looked up at him, blinking. "Mommy, he's the man from last night," he said brightly, "the one who helped us." Annie's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Derek forced a smile. "Hey, champ," he said quietly. "How's your mom feeling?" Leo grinned, pride in his voice. "Better. I told Sid you were a hero." The words stabbed at Derek's chest. Annie's gaze hardened. "Heroes don't leave families behind," she said coldly. The boy frowned, sensing the tension. "Mommy?" he asked, puzzled. She forced a smile, stroking his cheek. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's just tired." Leo turned to Derek, tilting his head. "You look like us," he said innocently. The air in the room froze. Derek's breath caught, his heart thundering. He crouched down slowly, his eyes locking with the boy's. "Do I?" he asked softly. Leo nodded, smiling. "Same eyes. Sid says so too." Annie's hand gripped the blanket tightly. "Leo, that's enough," she said quickly, but her voice trembled. Derek glanced at her, searching her face for denial, but found only silence. Her eyes were glassy, her lips pressed together. That silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. He rose slowly, stepping back, every part of him shaking. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. She didn't need to confirm it. Her silence already had. He turned his gaze back to her, voice rough. "You hid them from me." She met his stare, her chin lifting defiantly even as tears slid down her cheeks. "You hid yourself first," she said. "I just learned from you." The heart monitor beeped faster, matching the rhythm of her trembling chest. Derek moved closer instinctively. "Don't get worked up," he said softly, trying to calm her. "You need to rest." She glared at him. "Rest? After everything? After finding you standing over me like a ghost from a nightmare?" Her voice cracked again. "I don't even know who you are anymore." He lowered his head. "Neither do I," he whispered, "but I know what I want to be now." The words hung between them, vulnerable and unguarded. She looked away, unable to face the raw truth in his eyes. Leo looked between them, sensing the heaviness. "Mommy, are you mad at him?" he asked innocently. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, sweetheart, just surprised." Leo smiled. "Then maybe he can stay with us until you're better." Derek froze. The room went silent again. Amy's eyes widened, but before she could speak, Leo added softly, "He makes you smile, Mommy. You smiled when he talked." Her breath hitched. Derek didn't speak. He didn't need to. The warmth in the child's voice did what years of power never could. It broke him open completely. Annie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she turned her face away. "Don't make promises to them you can't keep," she whispered. Derek's reply was quiet, almost a vow. "This time I intend to keep them all." Her silence lingered like a heartbeat between them, heavy, fragile, and full of everything left unsaid. And in that silence, Derek finally knew the truth. He didn't need her words. Her silence was his confession, and it confirmed everything he feared and hoped for all at once. 4. The silence after Amy's words was deafening. Derek stood frozen by the hospital window, his reflection fractured by the raindrops still clinging to the glass. Behind him, the faint rhythm of the heart monitor filled the air, steady and cruel, reminding him that she was alive, but far beyond his reach. His chest rose and fell sharply. Every breath burned. Her silence, her pain, her defiance, they were all justified. He'd given her every reason to hate him. He turned away, his fists tightening at his sides. The rage wasn't at her. It was at himself. Every scar on her soul had his fingerprints. Every tear she'd shed was the price of his power. The empire he built had stolen her smile, her safety, and now, their years. He wanted to tear down everything he'd created. He moved to the door, but stopped for a moment, glancing back at her sleeping form. The twins were curled up beside her, small, fragile, oblivious to the storm between their parents. "I'll fix this," he muttered under his breath, the promise heavy as sin. Then he stepped out, letting the door close behind him with a quiet click that echoed like the shutting of a tomb. The hallway was cold, sterile, and suffocating. Derek's footsteps were slow at first, then faster, until he was almost storming through the corridors. Nurses glanced up nervously as he passed, sensing the fury radiating off him like heat. When he finally reached the exit, the night air slammed against him, raw and biting. He didn't stop walking until he reached the far edge of the parking lot, where his black car waited under a flickering light. He yanked out his phone and dialed a number that only one man in his empire dared to answer after midnight. "Rico," he said, his voice low and lethal. "I want everything. Every record, every trace, every shadow she's walked through these last 8 years." There was silence, then a cautious voice on the other end. "Boss, you mean the woman from the hospital?" His tone turned razor sharp. "Don't say her name. Just find it. I want to know how she's been surviving and who failed her when I wasn't there." Rico hesitated. "Understood, boss. But if she's been hiding that long, it won't be easy. Someone must have been protecting her." Derek's jaw tightened. "No one protected her. She protected herself. I just need to know from what." He hung up before Rico could answer. The phone trembled slightly in his grip. He wasn't used to feeling powerless. But tonight, every second was a reminder of how little control he had left. He lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done in years, and watched the smoke twist upward into the storm-heavy sky. The scent burned his throat, the taste bitter, but it was a punishment he welcomed. A shadow moved near the hospital gate, one of his guards keeping watch. The man hesitated, then approached. "Sir, are you all right?" Derek didn't answer. The guard shifted uneasily. "We'll keep her safe, boss. No one's getting close." Derek turned his head slowly, eyes dark as the night. "If anyone tries," he said quietly, "don't bring them to me. End it there." The guard swallowed hard and nodded. Hours bled into dawn. The city began to wake, but Derek never moved from his spot by the car. His mind replayed everything: her frail body on the street, the twins' tears, her voice trembling with hatred and love at once. He'd killed men for less than the pain he felt now. The phone buzzed again. Rico's voice came through, breathless. "Boss, we found something." Derek straightened, tension snapping through him like a live wire. "Talk." "She's been living under a false name, Amy Dawson, worked at a diner on the west side for years. Single mother. No record of any family, no support system. She moved every few months. Always paying cash. Always looking over her shoulder." Derek's blood ran cold. Why? Rico hesitated. Because someone was hunting her. The words froze him. "Who?" he demanded. "Any names?" "We're still digging, but it looks like one of your rivals. The Cortez family. They thought she was leverage years ago. Someone important to you." Derek's hand clenched so tightly around the phone, it cracked. "They knew?" "They suspected," Rico said. "When you disappeared from her life, they stopped. She must have kept running just in case." Derek's breath came in ragged bursts. The night tilted around him. So this was it. The truth he'd feared. He thought leaving her would keep her safe, but instead it painted a target on her back. His voice dropped to a whisper. "She suffered because of me." "Boss?" Rico started, but Derek cut him off. "Find out everything, every place she's been, every threat that came near her. I want their names, their faces, their graves." He hung up again, the phone heavy in his hand. The sky above was beginning to pale, the storm clouds thinning, but inside him, a darker storm was rising. He leaned against the car, his pulse thundering in his ears. The great Mr. Derek, the man who ruled cities, who made grown men tremble, was shaking. He whispered to himself, "You left her to save her, and all you did was make her bleed." The sound of his own voice disgusted him. He crushed the cigarette beneath his heel and turned back toward the hospital, every step heavier than the last. Inside, the halls were quieter now. He walked past rooms filled with strangers, their lives flickering behind glass. But when he reached her door, he stopped. Through the narrow window, he saw her still sleeping, her hand resting protectively over one of the twins. The sight gutted him. He wanted to walk in, to fall to his knees beside her bed and beg forgiveness. But he knew his presence was poison. He'd built an empire on power and fear, and now both stood between him and the only thing that ever mattered. The sound of approaching footsteps broke his thoughts. It was one of his men again, out of breath. "Boss," he said quickly. "We just got word. There's movement nearby. Unknown vehicles circling the hospital perimeter." Derek's eyes snapped to the window. "Whose?" "Can't confirm yet, but it doesn't look friendly." His pulse surged. "Get everyone on alert. No one gets near that room. No one." The guard nodded and rushed off. Derek stayed frozen, watching the glass reflection of his own face. For the first time in years, he didn't see the Mafia king. He saw a man stripped bare, terrified of losing the only thing real he'd ever had. Minutes passed like hours. The tension in the air grew thick, pressing down on his chest. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed softly, unaware that danger was closing in like a shadow. Derek's instinct screamed at him. He could feel it. Something was coming. His phone buzzed again. Rico's voice was urgent. "Boss, we just intercepted chatter. Someone sold information about your location. They know where you are. They know she's with you." Derek's heart slammed against his ribs. "Who leaked it?" "We don't know yet, but it's bad. You need to move her now." He was already moving before Rico finished speaking. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, sharp and relentless. His guards turned, startled, as he barked orders. "Seal every exit, double security on the west wing. No one in or out." He reached her door, hand on the handle, then stopped. He could hear the twins murmuring softly inside, their little voices calm, unaware of the storm about to break. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering himself. The rage inside him wasn't cold anymore. It was molten, ready to burn down everything that had ever hurt them. Then, crash. The sound of glass shattering tore through the quiet corridor. A nurse screamed. The twins' frightened voices echoed from inside the room. Derek's blood froze. And then came the sound that made his heart stop. Gunfire. 5. The echo of gunfire shattered the stillness of the hospital corridor. Nurses screamed. Alarms blared. The sterile white walls turned into a battlefield painted in flashing red light. Derek spun around, his instincts taking over before his thoughts could catch up. He reached for his gun, the motion seamless. Born from years of violence he thought he'd left behind. Another bullet tore through the window beside him, scattering glass across the floor. He ducked, rolled forward, and fired back. A clean, ruthless shot. Someone screamed in the distance. Through the chaos, a single sound cut deeper than the bullets, the terrified cries of the twins. "Mommy! Mommy!" Derek's heart jolted. He turned and sprinted toward the hospital room. His boots pounded the tiles, leaving streaks of blood and rainwater. He kicked the door open. Inside, the scene was a nightmare. Shards of glass everywhere, machines toppled, curtains shredded by bullets. Annie was on the floor, pulling the twins behind her, her hands shaking as she tried to shield them. When her eyes met his, there was terror, but also recognition. He was still the same man she feared and loved. He raised his gun, scanning the shadows. 2 masked men moved near the broken window. "Stay down," Derek growled. Then he fired. The first man dropped instantly, a single bullet through his chest. The second lunged forward, firing wildly. Derek dove behind the overturned hospital bed, bullets splintering the wood beside him. One shot grazed his arm, tearing through his sleeve and flesh. Blood trickled down, warm and fast, but he didn't flinch. Pain didn't matter. Only they did. He reloaded, stood, and fired 3 times, each shot deliberate, precise, merciless. The second man collapsed, his gun clattering uselessly across the floor. Silence followed for a split second, heavy and electric. Then, another window shattered from the hallway. More attackers. Derek's guards fired back, shouting commands. The hospital had become a war zone. He stepped in front of Annie and the boys, shielding them with his body as bullets ripped through the air again. "Stay behind me!" he shouted. Annie clutched the twins tighter, tears streaking her face. "You're bleeding." "I've bled worse," he growled, his voice rough. A figure emerged from the hallway smoke, a man in a dark suit, smirking. "The great Mr. Derek," he taunted. "Protecting your past won't save your future." Derek recognized the voice instantly. Vincent Cortez, one of the men who once swore revenge after Derek's empire crushed his family. "You should have stayed dead," Derek hissed. Vincent chuckled, raising his gun. "Funny. That's what she probably told you, too." Rage ignited in Derek's chest. He lunged forward, firing before Vincent could aim. The shot grazed Vincent's shoulder, spinning him around. But Vincent fired back, and the bullet tore through Derek's side. He stumbled but didn't fall. The pain was sharp, hot, blinding, but it only fueled him. Behind him, one of the twins screamed, "Mommy! He's hurt!" That single cry ripped through Derek's soul. He turned with renewed fury, charging forward even as blood seeped through his shirt. He tackled Vincent to the ground. The 2 men crashed into a metal cabinet, guns flying out of reach. They fought barehanded, each punch brutal, fueled by years of hatred. Vincent's fist connected with Derek's jaw, but Derek countered, slamming his knee into Vincent's chest. The rival gasped for air, his grin faltering. "You left her," Vincent spat between blows. "You left her to die alone, and now she'll die because you came back." The words hit harder than any punch. Derek's eyes darkened. He drove his fist into Vincent's throat, then again into his ribs until the man fell limp. He reached for the nearest gun, Vincent's, and aimed it straight at his face. "You brought this on yourself," Derek said coldly. Vincent smirked weakly, blood on his lips. "Now you'll lose what you abandoned once." The sentence sliced through Derek's chest like glass. He hesitated for a breath, just one heartbeat too long. Then the rage swallowed him whole. The gun roared. Vincent fell silent forever. Derek dropped the weapon, chest heaving. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of what he'd become again. He turned, blood dripping from his arm and side. His vision blurred for a moment, but through the haze, he saw Annie crawling toward him, the twins clinging to her dress. She reached out, trembling, her fingers brushing his wounded arm. "You'll never stop bringing danger to us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Even when you love me." He froze. Those words struck harder than any bullet. He wanted to speak, to explain, to promise her safety, but his voice failed. He looked down at his hand, stained red. The blood wasn't just his. It was the mark of every choice that had led them here. Outside, sirens wailed. Police and medics rushed into the chaos, but all Derek could hear was her voice echoing in his head. She was right. His world would always bring death to hers. He looked at the twins, two little faces streaked with tears, and saw both hope and fear staring back at him. One of them reached for him timidly, whispering, "Please don't go, sir." His throat tightened. He wanted to say, "I'll never leave you again," but the words stuck. The door burst open as his men stormed in, weapons drawn. "Boss, we've secured the floor." Derek didn't answer. He just stood there, silent, staring at the woman he could never stop loving, and the family he might never deserve. Annie pulled the twins close again, her eyes glistening with a mixture of anger, relief, and sorrow. "You saved us," she said quietly, "but at what cost?" He had no answer. He simply turned his gaze toward the shattered window where dawn's first light was creeping in, a light that looked far too pure for the blood-soaked floor beneath his feet. As medics rushed in to take Annie and the twins to safety, Derek's vision dimmed. The pain in his side deepened, his knees buckling. He caught the edge of the bed, forcing himself to stay upright. He couldn't fall, not now, not in front of them. Then everything began to blur, the lights, the voices, even her face. He heard Annie call his name once, soft and broken, before everything went black. 6. The darkness of the hospital night still clung to Derek's skin as he stood by the ambulance. Watching Annie and the twins being loaded inside, his vision was blurry but not from pain. His body had gone numb. When Annie turned her face away from him, something in him broke. Hours later, in the cold silence of dawn, he followed them, not as the ruthless Mafia boss the world feared, but as a man stripped of everything but guilt. The convoy of black SUVs escorted them through the sleeping city until the iron gates of his mansion opened. The twins' eyes widened at the towering estate, all glass, marble, and shadows. It wasn't a home, it was a fortress built to keep monsters out and one locked deep within. As the twins stepped inside, their small voices echoed in the vastness. "Mommy, is this where he lives?" Annie didn't answer. Her silence was her protest. Derek walked behind them, each step heavy with regret. He'd brought them here for safety, but every corner of the mansion screamed of isolation, of power paid for in blood. He wanted to tell her this was her home too, but he knew she'd never believe it. Instead, he simply said, "You'll be safe here." Her reply was cold and sharp. "We were safe before you found us." Her words sliced through him more than any bullet had. He turned away, clenching his jaw, refusing to show how much it hurt. That night, the mansion was too quiet. The twins, tucked into one of the guest rooms, whispered to each other about their new big house. Their laughter was soft, innocent, a sound Derek hadn't heard in years. He stood in the doorway unseen, just watching. For the first time, the walls didn't feel like stone. They felt alive, trembling with the sound of family. But when his gaze shifted to Annie, sitting by the window, arms folded tight around herself, the illusion shattered. She was miles away, even standing in his house. When he stepped closer, she didn't look at him. "You can't buy back years, Derek," she said softly, her voice tired but steady. "I'm not trying to buy them," he said, his voice rough. "I'm trying to deserve them." She finally turned to him, her eyes shimmering under the moonlight that streamed through the window. "Then start by earning trust, not control." He nodded silently. No threats, no arguments. Just quiet surrender. For the first time, the Mafia king bowed, not to an enemy, but to the woman he lost. Days passed, and the rhythm of the mansion changed. The twins filled the empty halls with laughter and questions. They played in gardens once guarded by killers. Derek watched them from afar, silently memorizing their smiles. He wanted to step closer, to be part of it, but Annie's cold glances reminded him. He was still an outsider to their peace. One afternoon, he overheard Leo ask his brother, "Do you think he's a good guy?" The question hit him like a shot. Sid shrugged. "Mom says he used to be bad, but maybe he's changing." Derek's breath caught. That maybe was enough to keep him standing. That night, as rain drizzled outside, Derek found Annie on the balcony. She stood barefoot, wrapped in her shawl, staring at the city lights far below. The wind played with her hair, and the city's glow made her tears shimmer like stars. He approached quietly, his footsteps soft, as if afraid to break the fragile air between them. "You should rest," he murmured. "You need to heal." She didn't turn around. "Some wounds don't heal with rest," she whispered. "Some stay open, especially when the person who caused them is standing behind you." His throat tightened. "If I could take your pain, I would." "You can't," she said flatly. "You already gave it." The words left a scar he couldn't hide, but still, he stepped closer until he was inches away. The scent of rain and her perfume mixed, familiar, haunting. Slowly, he lifted his hand and brushed away one tear from her cheek. She didn't pull back. Her breath trembled, her body stiff but not rejecting his touch. "You were never forgotten," he whispered. The words came out raw, stripped of pride. Her shoulders quivered. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The night hummed with tension and unspoken truths. Then she turned, her eyes meeting his, dark and glistening with anger, longing, and something she didn't want to name. "Then show me I wasn't replaced," she whispered. The challenge in her voice was sharp, but her eyes betrayed her. Beneath the hurt, there was hope. Derek's breath hitched. For years he'd built empires, fought wars, and survived betrayal. But this was the one battle he feared the most, her heart. He wanted to answer, to tell her no one could ever replace her, but he saw how fragile the moment was. One wrong word, and she'd retreat again. So he didn't speak. He simply reached for her hand, slow and steady, waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. The wind howled softly between them, carrying the scent of rain and memories of what they once were. Down the hall, the twins stirred in their sleep. A thunderclap echoed through the night. Annie flinched slightly, and Derek instinctively moved closer, his body a quiet promise of protection. She didn't move away this time. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said softly, not looking at him. "I don't make promises anymore," he replied. "I act." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then faintly, she whispered, "Then act right this time." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time since he met her again, she didn't look at him with hate. She looked at him with fear and fragile trust, battling inside her heart. He knew he had one chance to rebuild what he destroyed. As lightning flashed, their shadows intertwined against the marble wall, two souls haunted by the same fire. Deep inside, Derek knew this night wasn't about forgiveness. It was the beginning of reckoning. If he wanted them, He'd have to fight, not with guns or threats, but with the one weapon he'd never learned to use: love. And somewhere in the silence between them, Annie's heart whispered what her lips refused to say, that maybe, just maybe, there was still something left to save. 7. The night after that fragile truce on the balcony, the mansion seemed to breathe differently. The storm clouds hung low over the city, and thunder rolled like a warning from the heavens. Derek couldn't sleep. He stood near the window in his study, shirt sleeves rolled up, his bandaged arm still aching from the hospital chaos. But the pain he couldn't ignore was deeper. The ache that came every time he thought of her eyes when she said, "Then show me I wasn't replaced." Her voice still lingered in the air like a ghost. Down the hall, soft laughter broke through his thoughts. The twins. He followed the sound and found them playing near the fireplace. Annie sitting nearby with a book in her lap. She wasn't reading. Her eyes were distant, watching the flames dance. When she noticed him, her expression flickered between wariness and something softer. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked quietly. "Not without knowing you're all safe," he replied. She didn't respond, but her silence didn't carry the same bitterness it once did. The warmth from the fire painted her face in gold, making her look almost untouchable, like a dream that dared him to believe again. Hours passed. The twins finally drifted to sleep in her arms, and she carried them to their room. Derek followed, standing at the doorway as she tucked them in. "They trust you," he said softly. "That's dangerous," she murmured without turning, "because I don't." The words stung, but he nodded. He deserved that. When she walked past him, their shoulders brushed, just a whisper of contact, but it sent a shock through him. Later, as the storm raged outside, she found him again, this time in the hallway staring at the rain streaking down the tall windows. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, sharp with guilt and longing. "You never stop watching," she said. "You never stop running," he answered. Their gazes locked, and for the first time neither looked away. "Why now, Derek?" she whispered. "Why after all these years?" He took a step closer, his voice low. "Because I thought leaving would save you, but I see now it only destroyed us." Her breath hitched. "Would you still choose your empire over us?" The question hung between them like a blade. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked closer, every step echoing like thunder. When he finally spoke, his voice was trembling but true. "I'd burn my empire to the ground if it meant keeping you." The storm outside cracked like it hurt him. Her lips parted in disbelief, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Then why does your world still follow us?" The lightning illuminated his face, haunted, fierce, and raw. "Because monsters don't stop hunting," he said, "and I made too many of them." She took a step back, anger mixing with sorrow. "You brought this storm to my door, Derek. You, your choices, your war, they never stopped." He moved forward, his voice breaking. "I know. And if I could undo it, I would. Every bullet, every night I spent without you, it was punishment." Her chin trembled, and her defenses began to crack. "You think guilt makes you a better man?" He shook his head. "No, but loving you does." Silence hung heavy, the air charged with something electric. She turned her face away, but he reached out, catching her hand. "Don't," she said, but her voice lacked strength. "You said you'd act," she whispered. "So act. Prove to me you mean it." His grip tightened around her hand, his eyes searching hers. "Tell me how." "Let me go," she said, though her voice trembled, "or hold me like you'll never lose me again. There's no in between." The storm outside grew violent, the rain crashing against the glass like drums. He took a slow, deliberate step closer. Their breaths tangled, the air thick with old pain and forbidden want. "You think I don't see it?" she murmured. "That look in your eyes, it's the same one from the night you left." "That night," he said, his voice rough, "I walked away because I thought love made me weak, but now I know. It's the only thing that makes me human." His words broke her guard for a moment. Her lips quivered, her eyes glistening as if she was fighting herself more than him. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch trembling. "Annie," he whispered, her name a prayer. "You're the only thing I ever did right." The thunder boomed. The distance between them vanished. She looked up, eyes swimming in unshed tears, and whispered, "Then why does it still hurt?" "Because you still love me," he said, "and that scares you." Her breath caught. The truth was heavy between them, undeniable, dangerous, beautiful. "Then prove it," she whispered. "Choose us, or your crown." His pulse raced. The crown, his empire, his legacy, his darkness, the only thing he'd ever ruled. And here she was, asking him to burn it all for love. He stepped closer until her back met the cold wall. His hand rested on her waist, his eyes searching hers. "You already know my choice," he said, voice trembling with devotion and defiance. Outside, lightning slashed across the sky, illuminating them in a flash of silver and shadow. She looked into his eyes and saw a man ready to destroy his kingdom for her, and it terrified her more than the storm. The rain pounded harder, echoing the rhythm of their hearts. Between them hung the promise of something dangerous, something alive. The night held its breath as their lips hovered inches apart, the storm raging like their hearts, hungry, defiant, and on the edge of ruin. And in that breathless silence, love finally began to burn. The storm had quieted by dawn. The mansion stood drenched in silver light, its halls echoing with the weight of what had been said, of what had changed. Derek hadn't slept. He sat by the fireplace, his thoughts burning hotter than the flames. The words she whispered last night, "Choose us or your crown," reverberated through every vein, every scar, every memory he'd spent years trying to bury. Outside, the world he once ruled waited for his command. Inside, the world he could no longer live without waited for his decision. When the first light of morning broke through the clouds, Derek rose. His reflection in the window stared back at him, a man built by violence, now broken by love. He straightened his suit one last time. Not as a king preparing for battle, but as a man ready to surrender his throne. Down the corridor, the twins' laughter echoed faintly. Annie's soft voice followed, a melody of normalcy, fragile and beautiful. For the first time, he understood what peace could sound like, and he realized it was worth everything. He walked out of the room, his decision carved deep into his soul. The grand hall was silent when he entered. His men stood in rows, hardened, loyal, confused. They'd followed him through blood and war, through streets painted in fear. They'd never seen him hesitate, but today his steps were slower. Each one carried the weight of a lifetime. He stopped at the center of the room, facing the empire that had once bowed to him. "I called you here," he began, his voice steady but heavy, "because I owe you the truth." Murmurs rippled through the ranks. Derek's gaze swept across their faces. Men who would die for him, men who didn't yet understand what love could cost. "I built this empire with these hands," he said, raising his scarred palms, "and these same hands nearly destroyed everything that mattered." The silence deepened. "I'm stepping down." The words hit the hall like a thunderclap. Gasps filled the air. Some shouted in disbelief. Others stood frozen, waiting for him to take it back. But Derek didn't. "You heard me," he said firmly. "I'm done." One of his lieutenants, Marco, stepped forward, eyes wide. "Boss, this isn't you. You're the crown. The streets won't survive without you." Derek's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Then let them learn to breathe without fear for once." Marco's jaw clenched. "You'd give up everything? For her?" "No," Derek said quietly. "For them." He turned, his gaze distant, his voice softening. For the first time, I have something I can't afford to lose, and I won't risk their lives for the ghosts of my empire. Another man shouted, "What about loyalty?" Derek met his eyes, unflinching. Loyalty without purpose is just a chain, and I'm done wearing it. The hall went still. His men looked at one another, unsure whether to mourn or respect the death of their king. "From this day forward," Derek said, his tone final, "I live for them." And with that, he walked out. No hesitation, no glance over his shoulder. Outside, the air felt different, cleaner, colder. The weight of the crown fell away with every step. His shoes clicked against the marble path as sunlight filtered through the clouds. He saw them in the distance, Annie and the twins, waiting by the fountain. She held their hands, watching the ripples shimmer across the water. She didn't yet know what he'd done, but she felt it. Something in his eyes was different, lighter, freer. The twins spotted him first. "Mommy, it's him!" they shouted, running forward. Derek dropped to his knees, his heart pounding as they collided into his arms. He held them tight, the warmth of their little bodies grounding him in a way no power ever could. "I wasn't there when you took your first steps." His voice broke, emotion clawing through his throat. "But I'll never miss another one." The words cracked something open inside him. The boys looked up at him with wide, tearful eyes before smiling. "Daddy," they whispered at first, then louder, stronger. "Daddy!" The sound shattered the last piece of armor around his heart. He laughed, the sound raw and trembling, and pulled them closer, pressing kisses to their hair. When he finally looked up, Annie was standing a few feet away, her hand over her mouth, tears glistening in her eyes. You did it, didn't you?" she whispered, stepping forward. "You let it go." He rose slowly, still holding the twins' hands. "It was never mine to keep," he said softly. "The crown, the empire, the blood, it all belonged to a man I don't want to be anymore." She stood before him, eyes searching his face for the truth. "And what are you now?" "Yours," he said simply. She exhaled a trembling laugh, half disbelief, half relief. He reached for her hand, guiding it to his chest. "I left you once," he whispered, "but this time, I'm home for good." She leaned into him, tears spilling freely now. The twins hugged their parents' legs, laughter mingling with sobs. The wind carried the scent of rain, the city below glowing under a soft sunrise. For the first time, Derek didn't see a battlefield or a kingdom, just a life waiting to be lived. He pressed his forehead against hers, the world fading until there was only her heartbeat against his. "You gave up your empire," she murmured, her fingers brushing his cheek. "No," he corrected softly. "I traded it. For forever." The final shadows of his past slipped away as the morning light bathed them in gold. Sometimes love doesn't demand power, it demands surrender. And when he surrendered, he found everything he was fighting for. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Heartwoven Tales, where every story is stitched with emotion, passion, and fate. Press the bell icon so you never miss the next soul-stirring tale. If you felt the pain, the love, and the fire in this journey, then like this video, share it with your friends, and stay with us. Because the next tale will break your heart and heal it all over again.